My 3-ingredient Nutella Brownies recipe is easy and delicious. If you want to learn how to make the best fudgy brownies, this video is for you. Let's go over the ingredients. Like I said, there are only 3, so for an 8x8 pan of brownies, you will need one 13-ounce jar of Nutella or some other hazelnut spread, 371 grams, half a cup of all-purpose flour as I measure 75 grams, and 2 large eggs. Although it's optional, I'm also going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt to help balance out the flavors. Like I said, this recipe is super easy. All I have to do is combine the ingredients into this bowl, mix them together, pour the batter into my greased 8x8 baking dish, and then bake. So I am going to start by dumping the Nutella into this bowl, and then I'm going to add the eggs, mix together the wet ingredients, and then add in the flour and salt. So very little prep work, basically just dumping things into a bowl, stirring, and then baking. There, I think I scraped as much out as I can. Now for the eggs. One thing I did want to point out is that both the eggs and the Nutella are room temperature. This is going to be very difficult if you keep your Nutella in the refrigerator because it's going to be a lot harder. So I recommend taking your Nutella out of the refrigerator for 30 to 60 minutes before you start the recipe. It's going to be a lot easier to mix everything together. And now the Nutella and eggs are fully combined. As you can see, I had to move to the bigger spoon. It was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be, but like I said, just make sure it is at room temperature and you have a big spoon. Now for the flour. Actually, I think this might be easier to do bit by bit. So I'm going to actually some the salt there and some salt there. And then I'm just going to mix in the flour a little at a time. So maybe in fourths. Yeah, this is probably the easier way to do it. Like I said, this is all-purpose flour, so this does not have any baking powder or salt. It is not self-rising flour. If you want to use self-rising flour, you probably could, but I think the brownies, they're not going to be as fudgy. They're going to be more like a cake, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just what you're looking for. As you can see, the flour is now mixed in. The batter is really thick, so I think these are going to be nice and fudgy. Off to the side. Like I said, my 8x8 casserole dish, 8x8 baking dish that is greased. So now I'm just going to pour in the batter and then even it out as best as I can. There, all smoothed out. Now I'm going to put my brownies into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered. I'll let you know for how long. I just pulled my Nutella brownies out of the oven. They were in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered for 30 minutes, 30. And as you can see here, a toothpick inserted into the brownies comes out clean. These brownies looked and smelled really chocolatey, so I couldn't wait to give them a try. You could probably cut into them an hour after taking them out of the oven, but I ran out of time, so I had to try them the next day. And when I finally did try them, I knew that my 3-ingredient Nutella Brownies recipe was a big success because they were absolutely delicious. First of all, the flavor. These brownies definitely tasted like Nutella, but the Nutella flavor was not as strong as I was expecting. Honestly, I felt like the main flavor was chocolate with Nutella in the background. So even though Nutella was the main ingredient in this recipe, I think a better way to describe the flavor would be brownies with Nutella rather than a Nutella brownie, if that makes sense. Although the flavor was good, I liked the texture as well. Although they were fudgy, I think the better adjective would be chewy. And as you can see on the top, there was a slightly crispy layer that contrasted nicely with the chewy, fudgy center. Overall, the brownies were fairly dense, but as you can see here, there were some air pockets in the brownies which helped to lighten it up, giving these brownies the perfect texture, at least in my opinion. Interestingly, these brownies made me think of the Little Debbie Galaxy brownies. I feel like those have a similar texture. It's been a while since I've had them, so maybe they've changed, but if I remember correctly, they're pretty chewy, and these brownies had a very similar texture. And in addition to the flavor and texture, I also liked the look of these brownies. In my opinion, they were basically textbook brownies. As I'm sure you can tell, I really liked how these brownies turned out, and when I shared them with some people, everyone raved about them. Nobody could believe that these Nutella brownies only had 3 ingredients because they tasted so good. Even though I already have a brownie recipe here on my channel, I think this one might be my new go-to recipe because it's so easy and tastes so good. Learning how to make these brownies is super easy. All you have to do is mix 3 ingredients together. The only thing you have to keep in mind is that I felt like these brownies were a little bit harder to mix than you would think. Nutella is pretty dense and thick, so maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was shocked by just how much I had to stir to combine everything together. I guess you could use an electric mixer, but honestly, I think it might be overkill, so just be prepared to use a big spoon to mix everything together thoroughly. And another thing I wanted to point out is that while this isn't necessarily a negative, these brownies aren't very thick, as you can see. So if you want them to be thicker, I would probably add some baking powder, but then they won't be as chewy and fudgy. They'll be more like cake. So that's just something you're going to have to decide. Those two small critiques aside, this easy 3 ingredient Nutella brownies recipe is definitely worth a try. Although these brownies would be perfect for the holidays because they're so quick and simple to make on short notice, honestly, they would be good at any time of the year. So if you make this recipe, I know you'll love it. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.